Lunch with Lee was recorded at Hive Sound Studios, Sydney's newest podcast, recording and all audio hub. If you have any recording needs, go to their website, Hive Sound Studios. Hello and welcome to Lunch with Lee. I'm your host, Shane Lee. Today on the show, Michael O'Loughlin, a former AFL professional footballer playing 303 games for the mighty Sydney Swans. He's a two-time All-Australian and won the AFL Premiership in 2005. Post-footy, he's launched the Go Foundation in 2009 with friend and teammate Adam Goods, providing opportunities and scholarships and programs for young Indigenous people. And in 2016, founded CMC Indigenous Services, a company specialising in cleaning and property maintenance. He loves his music and he's a good bloke. Welcome, Mickey.
Thanks for having me, mate. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, buddy. And Miles Hunt, a lawyer and Senate candidate for New South Wales for the legalised cannabis party. He's the co-founder of a drug harm minimisation charity called Unharm. He's an author, a former rugby union player, and had dreams of being a sketch comedian. Welcome, Miles.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
Now, Miles, I'm going to start with you because of all the guests I've ever had on Lunch with Lee, you've got to be one of the most diametrically opposed people when you're talking about your credits here, from a lawyer to leading a legalised cannabis party to want to become a sketch comedian. You're pretty diverse.
Yeah, like a jack of all trades, master of none is my theory, you know. I did comedy, I loved that, and gave that a crack. And the politics, they sort of link law, comedy,
Sure.
politics, this writing, you know, it's all theatre, writing and arguing and trying to sort of get to the point of an issue.
That's it. Now, Mickey, Mark Taylor always said, if you don't have a nickname, you're not a good bloke. Well, you've got, I knew your nickname's Mickey O, Magic Mick. But what's Paradise? Where'd that come from?
Paradise? Who gave you that?
Paradise.
I've never heard that one.
Haven't you?
No, Paradise.
Someone's winding you up then, mate. It's on one of your profile pieces.
No, Paradise. No.
Paradise by the Dash Light. Was it something when he was younger with a girl in the car?
No. The greatest nickname I was ever given, obviously Mickey O, is one that just sort of flows off from a footballing point of view. But when we used, and you'd know this, when we used to sort of hit the club scene back in the day, I'd be in all the sort of the bars and the nightclubs, and so a mate of mine nicknamed me Arthritis in every joint. So I actually thought that was a pretty cool one. So, Arthritis, and everyone was like, "Who's Arthritis?" It's Mickey O. He's in every bloody joint. So
yes, that's brilliant, mate. One of my favourite nicknames I ever heard was a guy who was the manager of St Kilda Football Club, and he gave himself this own nickname because he was born with one arm shorter than the other, and he calls himself the Clock, which I thought was an absolute cracker. Miles, any nicknames? You played rugby union, socially.
Yeah.
Linfield, you must have had some nicknames there.
Well, I reckon the best is my dad's gave me, which was 1.6, you know, as a 1.6 kilometres to a mile.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Now, Mickey, we're not far away from the start of the AFL season. You know, I'm a passionate Swans supporter. So March 6th, we kick off opening round versus Hawthorn. How are we going to go this year?
Yeah, the guys are looking pretty good at the moment. I mean, new coach, John Longmire spent 20-odd years there. He was an assistant when I was still playing, then took the reins and had huge success with the Swans, creating a really solid culture there. And you've got Dean Cox, who's one of the legends of the game from West Coast Eagles. Coaching aspirations, has been in Sydney for a number of years now and has taken the reins. So that just got fast tracked a little bit. And I think after last year's grand final, it was probably the right call from John and the club. And I was privy to a lot of it, as a lot of guys would know that I'm on the Swans board now. So we had a lot of collaboration with both coaches, talking about John's future. It's quite interesting. John's actually working at the football club as we speak. So not too many places where you resigned, got sacked or moved on, that you continue to work for the club. So, but that's the relationship John's built over a number of years and highly successful at what he did for 20 plus years. What a record he's left and a legacy.
Yeah, very, very well respected and a great guy too. Pretty much getting young guys up and building them through and turning them into great players and great people as well.
Absolutely. He's record speaks for itself. I think the percentage of wins from a senior coach over 10 plus years I think he holds the record, maybe. Number of grand finals, and obviously had success in one of them, and the other sort of four didn't eventuate to success. But ultimately, the legacy he's left with the great people that he's and the legacy from coaching aspirations to those players who've had fantastic careers. I mean, that says everything you need to know about a really good coach, I reckon.
This playing group now, Mickey, 2022, it's one of the first games I ever watched with my son. I got him to watch the Collingwood in 2022, took him to the SCG to watch that great game against Collingwood, and he loved it. And then we got smashed by Geelong in the final, I think by 81 points. Said that, I'm not so sure. Swans. But then some of the players still around now, and then you had 2024 last year against Brisbane, lost by 60 points. There must be some real deep mental scars there now, you would think.
Yeah, it's a great question, and a lot of people have asked me over the journey. And I think the only thing, I mean, I'm sitting here watching as a board director, ex-player, and passionate Swans man myself. It's a really hard pill to swallow. Like you played so well over the course of the year.
Yep.
That credible success, and then I think we won. I don't know what it was. There was a number of games, double digits, where we won in a row. We travelled, we won, we played well. And then we went to Adelaide and we got absolutely smashed by, let's call it 100 plus points. And that very rarely happens with the Swans team. So it was a bit of a reality check. And then you go through to the rest of the season, you play finals, and we did what we had to do. And to turn up to grand final day and to perform the way we did, that, we talk about legacy and what kind of player you want to be and how to perform in big games. There'll be some guys that looked at that. Well, I know they've looked back on it and just be really disappointed with the lack of effort more than anything. So mistakes are mistakes, and the AFL games are full of mistakes. It's how you recover and then get on with the job. But the lack of effort to chase, tackle, apply pressure, and Brisbane really ramped up the heat, and we just couldn't cope. So some players will look back on that and reflect and just be disappointed. And apart from having a break, dealing with it, which I think the playing group has done with Dean also, I believe that the review went for hours upon hours upon hours. So it's really hard when you're watching yourself and you're not performing, you're just sitting in your seat and you're sinking in your seat and you're just getting lower and lower. It's a hard pill to swallow, with the rest of the football club there as well, watching that review. The rest of the football world, walking the streets. What happened on the grand final day? What happened? And it's tough, but that's part of the professional game. And they've had, they're a club that's always been thereabouts, the Swans. So reflecting on that, some little tweaks here and there with Dean Cox, I think, going into the 2025 season. Players look refreshed. They look good, but everyone looks good in pre-season.
They do, mate, don't they? Yep.
And the proof's in the pudding. They've got a game next week, and we'll see how they go. That's all you can do as a professional athlete. Do the work, and you front up. You don't hide. You don't sweep it under the rug. You get back out there in front of 38,000 fans, and you produce.
We'll talk about not hiding and trying not to sweep things under the rug. I'll ask you, Miles, how do you go from a very comfortable career in law to, as I said, the Senate candidate for New South Wales for the legalised cannabis party? Mate, you must feel under pressure when you go. I always see people in politics, and it's like a schoolyard, isn't it, almost, where people start shouting at you and they call you names. How have you found it so far?
So far, so good. Obviously it is. Seems like a grubby game at times. I don't know. I think as a small minor party with just one sort of focus, it's easier because we don't necessarily have to comment on everything. And to me, it's like, I've been like a lawyer. I was fighting for justice for people who got injured in work situations. And then I was working at the Actors Union. We're helping people who, helping collective actors against, fighting for better rights. And it's the next step, I reckon, is fighting for people who, to me, it's a justice issue. People have been criminalised. So, which I hate, for cannabis use and possession. It's about realising that the criminalisation of people cause a lot of the harm. So, to me, I feel like I'm doing something good. History is going to absolve us. I think in the future, it'll be better if we have some sort of regulated market and you can reduce risk and lower sort of the dangers that come with drugs and things like that. Like, and so, yeah, it's part of a whole package of just trying to help people. And this is something that's mattered to me for a long time. And it is a big step to come out and do it publicly and
Yeah.
face that criticism and take on a difficult issue and deal with the taboo and stigma. But sort of hopefully if I'm nice and give everyone respect, people do the same to me.
Yes, it is a very brave thing to do. You think how long it takes to actually get your degree in law and the amount of work that goes into that. But you've been very, very open with your own personal use over the years and that sort of stuff. And, you know, I remember watching a few things of you in interviews with you, and I thought how honest you were. That's a brave thing to do.
Thanks, Shane. Yeah, I think honesty, I've always tried to be honest in my whole life. And
Yep.
I reckon if you're an honest person, it shows, and people can pick up on that and see that authenticity. And even if you disagree with someone, at least you can see that they're authentic, and whether, you can then either choose to take it on board or leave it. But it's an open discussion and an argument that we've got to have as a society about how we deal with drugs and how we treat people who use them. And cannabis is a fairly, low end risk, softer one. So it's a good one to start off about and try and regulate.
If elected and you're in the Senate, what were the first three things you'd change?
Well, I mean, federally, I think in a way the Crimes Acts are generally New South Wales issues, but there is a Federal Crimes Act. So it would be about changing that and allowing the states to potentially make their own laws without being in conflict with the Commonwealth.
Yep.
That would be one. And then maybe doing some sort of commission or some sort of come together and have like a cannabis, a broader discussion in the community and with experts. And I'll try and initiate that. And then I want to look at the drug driving laws and talking about how currently you test people for THC and it detects the presence, not the impairment. So people who on medicinal cannabis legally, they might have had medicinal cannabis for their back pain last night or 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and then the THC is still in their system at a minute level, and they can be banned from driving. So that's, I think, an injustice as well.
Mickey, I want to ask you, because you grew up in Adelaide boy, and I mentioned at the start you founded the Go Foundation, the Goods O'Loughlin Foundation, where you do a lot of great work with young Indigenous kids. Were drugs and alcohol a big part of your growing up, and is that something that the kids really struggle with in those communities?
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up in Adelaide, a place called Salisbury North, which is about 20, 30 minutes out of CBD, big Indigenous population there, had an incredible childhood, plenty of love and laughter, and footy was the number one sport. Everyone played it. We shouldn't say it, but I now run a foundation putting kids in school, and I used to skip school to go and kick the footy. So, I mean, make that make sense.
I love it. Do as I say.
But it is an incredible foundation that Adam and I had put together. We had no idea what we were doing. We just knew that we had a lot of help ourselves going through the process and going through all these different programs and a lot of support. And we wanted to repay the faith certainly to the people here in New South Wales, first of all, because of the way they looked after us. As we got here at 17 years of age, we had no idea. I wasn't even shaving. It was crazy. No idea how to cook, clean, do any of that stuff. So we had a lot of great people look after us. And I own a cleaning business. I mean, make it make sense. It's been one of the really great, I guess, right time, right place. And if I look back on my childhood, there was a lot of marijuana use where I grew up, and people got in trouble. And then there was others that, and I didn't understand it as a young child going through it all, that they were medicating from some trauma.
Yeah,
a lot of people who went through hell and back, stuff that I wasn't exposed to, but I'd known about. And you can talk about stolen generation. You can talk about removal from families just around the corner from my house. And my cousin was living there. Then he suddenly wasn't living there and was put into a juvenile detention center. And for just random small stuff, there was some really, don't get me wrong, there was some stuff that people have to put their hand up and take responsibility for. But a lot of the stuff I didn't understand around trauma at all as a young man. And as I got older, learned and thought there was some really injustice things happening around our neighbourhood that I certainly opposed as a young adult, now an older adult. So lots of drugs, lots of alcohol, but there was also a lot of love, but there was also a lot of support for people as well. And you mix that in with the biggest game in Australia, which is, you got soccer, you've got NRL, you've got the RL, but AFL rules the roost in Adelaide. So
that and cricket,
and that was. And cricket, we all, like in the backyard, everyone played cricket. Unfortunately, our backyards, there was about 1,000 people in the backyard, and we all wanted to be Viv Richards. So
didn't we? What
it was incredible. Yeah, we still do. Correct,
Miles. What Michael described then, it's sort of I don't know if some misconceptions around, but around the legalizing cannabis. There's a stat here. This year in Australia, Australians will spend $7 billion on illicit drugs, and $6 billion of that profit goes to the suppliers. It's big numbers we're talking about here. So you're trying to convince people about legalizing something that a lot of people may have a negative experience with. That's got to be the real crux of what, the juxtaposition where you're trying to fight.
Yeah, I think you got to. There's also, we spend $2 billion on policing, so there's costs there. But I think you got to reverse the onus and say, look, criminalization is meant to be a deterrent, but it doesn't necessarily deter people.
No, really not.
And a lot of negative stuff that comes from drug related crime and is related to the criminalization of people and that experience of going through criminal justice, being treated by police, going through the court system. That's a horrible experience. So, in countries that have done it, like Uruguay with decriminalized possession and things, you've often seen people are brought into the fold. If they are caught with possessing a drug, they can instead of going through the police process, they can go and meet someone, have some education, see a doctor, try and start initiating the discussion where you can get a better outcome, So, yeah, I think it's about that attitude rather than necessarily the risks and the negatives of the drug. It's like, well, let's look at how our current way of dealing with it affects people, and is there a better way to do it?
Yeah, and look, there's got to be a better way to do it because it just seems to be out of control now, and it's the criminalization component. It's not changing anything at all, is it? It's growing. The amount of people using drugs is growing year on year. So something's not right.
Yeah, and I think that even police prosecuting these crimes, it destroys their relationship with the community. You could actually, if you take away that need to charge people for possession of small quantities of cannabis, there's 70,000 people a year charged with criminal possession of cannabis in this country. That's and it ruins their lives potentially. So,
and Mickey, I know as a cricketer, we were always drug tested. You guys are often drug tested. It was quite funny whenever we were in the change room. They'd come in, ASDA, and it's always random, they reckon. And they'd say, just a quick random test for Greg Matthews and Stuart McGill. every time. Totally random. Every time they're getting tested. Who was getting the call up in the Swans change room?
Oh, no, look, it was the AFL, as a young boy going through it was around the drug testing. And I sort of put my hand up and said, test me whenever you wanted. And then there was in season, out season, and there was all these other bits. I had no idea. I didn't take drugs. So I was like, test me anywhere you want. If I'm going to America and they want to turn up there, they can. I'm not too fussed.
Yep.
Whereas it was really interesting hearing the other boys' arguments around, we don't want to be tested on our days off. Well, I couldn't care less. If you didn't do drugs, you're okay.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is the performance enhancing stuff was a serious threat to the game. And it's not what we want to show our young generations coming through the game that you need to play the game that you love. Come out, work hard. There's so many unbelievable stories within the game that you don't need these things. So unfortunately, we will always have an issue with performance enhancing drugs for people trying to get better. We've been very lucky at AFL land. I can only remember Justin Charles was the first, I reckon, play for Richmond was done with a performance enhancing thing. But apart from that, there's always I guess the anonymity of the recreational drugs, which cocaine and all those other bits and pieces. So I don't know enough about what's happening in the AFL world, NRL world, the union world around what's because we have a strike system which I don't quite understand.
I don't quite get that either.
I don't get it, to tell you
Yeah.
the truth.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you get caught with cocaine in the off season, that there's like you don't get notified. The clubs don't get notified. The admin within the Swans, they don't get notified. Is my belief is what happens now.
Okay.
If you're a coach and your coaching career is on the line, and you got 10 blokes going out to Bali and having benders, and it's one strike. I mean, that's why club culture and education is absolutely a serious key to successful clubs getting the results they want on the field. But I just haven't really delved into it enough. My view is you should be able to get performance enhancing testing and testing wherever. If you go on holiday, you go on holiday. You're getting paid $1 million. I mean, it's
you're crazy. I think you're crazy as a professional sportsman now. Past has done so much to allow, and the money in the game for professional athletes. Like, you'd be pretty crazy to risk all that.
I'll go through it. Like, the minimum wage, so is something like, for an AFL player, minimum wage is $300-something thousand. Now, mate, when I rocked up to Sydney, I signed a contract for $8,000 and lived off it for a year. It was just crazy, right?
Yeah.
Hey?
You pay more in tolls these days.
Well, they looked after my rent, apparently. I don't know, but it was $8,000. I just remember it. And that was a lot of money for my mum and I. We're like, oh, wow, this is incredible.
You made it.
I mean, now I'm waiting for the invoice from you blokes for $10,000 for this podcast. So
it checks in the mail, mate. Checks in the mail, yeah. So Miles, so you're still practicing law?
Yeah, I'm a lawyer now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Part of that, mate. So that's your day job. But so how much time does it take up from the politics to your day-to-day stuff?
It's a bit of time, and it's voluntary work. And if you get elected, which would be potentially, I mean, you get a well-paid job and you get a position in Canberra, and that's obviously you can't keep doing your real job then. You've got to let that go. But for now, it's just labour of love, do the campaign, see how we go, and at worst case, don't get elected. At least we get to put our point forward and be part of the conversation and all that sort of stuff.
I definitely think we don't pay our politicians enough, to be honest. I think
well, they get less than the AFL player then.
Well, they do. And you think about, you've got two smart kids coming out of university. One gets a job in Macquarie Bank, can be straight on $1 million a year, or you're going to go and work in politics. They're going to take, unless they're doing it for the wrong reasons, they're probably going to take the cushy and the easier route. They're working for the private bank, right? But yeah, I just think Singaporeans do it so well. They identify the smartest kids. They send them off to Oxford and Harvard. They bring them back to Singapore, and they put them on $1 million a year base. And they say, you do one thing wrong, we're going to put you in jail. But they've got the smartest people running the country.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. Like, if you're really good at maths, for example, you can go become an options trader and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily contributing as a positive way to our society. So I agree, like, if there's a way to get the best and brightest to be involved in the running of the country. I mean, there's an argument that if you've got lots of money and you do politics for love, potentially, or there's an argument you're too close to money. I don't know. It's a difficult one, because I also want to keep, you want to keep money out of politics as much as possible as well. So I don't know what the balance is.
He's one of the best people. So money shouldn't be a factor in the decision. Talk about making lots of money. Talk me through CMC, Mickey. You're Indigenous Services business. You got some massive.
It's going really well, thanks, mate. We're rebranded, so we are ARA now, ARA Indigenous Services, which is it's a bit like the Go Foundation with the scholarship program. We're creating opportunities for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people to join in the workforce. When I started the business, I think nearly 10 years ago, there was about 300 identified Aboriginal businesses and from the Supply Nation group. And now there's about 3,500 and growing. So really incredible. So started a cleaning business with a business partner of mine, and we've sort of gone strength to strength. And it's been been an amazing journey. It's been one that's kept me absolutely flat out. But the great thing is, being able to hire and teach, certainly in the cleaning industry, has been very, very generous to our family. We've won some really great contracts and have great clients. Allows us to go on and hire more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So, and we're a non-government entity, so we have roughly 101. I think it was the last count as of January was about 101 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people working for us. So that's a really great initiative. No government funding. That's purely as a for-profit business going and hiring and basically saying what we're going to do. And these guys come and work for us. They work hard, but the stories that they take back, that they're working,
yes,
paying for the
feel good about themselves.
Houses,
yep,
unbelievable stories. We don't tell enough great stories about our people. All you hear is the mad, bad, and sad about Aboriginal people in the front page of the paper. So these stories we need to continue to tell and make sure that we rise up. And so not only our community, the Aboriginal community, gets to know them, but also the wider Australia community. So, and we're in an incredible country, but we've got a lot of work to do, and telling these stories helps that. So it's not just about going out and kicking a footy or throwing a rugby league ball or throwing a few down the pitch. It's not just sports people. It's now business ownership, home ownership.
Yeah.
Own your own car, pay your own school fees and things like that. That's not in our vocabulary. We've never taught that. My mother wasn't taught that. My grandmother wasn't taught that. My grandfather wasn't taught that. So
you're making generational change here, mate. You really are.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to do. And the foundation also plays that part that goes, guys, you can do this. We'll help you and support you through your schooling and your university. I think we've got 27 at uni at the moment, going through university. University's not for everyone, but so there's also TAFE is available. And then we want you guys to be these shining lights to our people. As I said, you don't hear about those stories. You only hear about the mad, bad, and sad about our mob. So, and I've had enough of it. Adam Goods has had enough of it.
Yep.
Others have had enough of it. And we need to continue great stories and uplift everybody. Black, white, green, doesn't matter.
Give them role models. Positive news is great news, I think. I know, Miles, because I'm involved with a charity called Brain for Life, and it's around concussions in sport and head trauma. And there's quite a lot of research now with CBD within cannabis itself can be really, really good to repair brain function. Are you across that and that sort of research that's happening at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, medical cannabis seems to be a potentially huge medicine. It's having there's so many potential benefits around pain, anxiety, arthritis, and I think as you said, I think Andrew Johns is someone who's talked about it. As being a useful thing. It's also for medicinal cannabis for epilepsy and things like that. So the potential, I mean, if we bring it into the fold and deal with it and invest in it, there's potentially great there. And that medicinal cannabis got legalized in 2016 because Mickey was talking about the stories and how important they are because of a boy in Tamworth, Haslam. He had terminal cancer, and his mum and dad were trying to get medicinal cannabis for him, and it helped with it. It was the only thing that could deal with his pain, and he used that, and it made a huge difference. And that story brought medicinal cannabis. It was there. It got legalized federally, and now it's potentially a huge industry. And I hope there's uses like, as you say, for people with concussion and brain injuries, because I think hemp, as a plant, it's been used for thousands of years, and it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, no, it's the charity involved in, they're doing a lot of research around this to give people the right answers and collecting the data. So it's a really, really interesting space that they're in. And a lot of guys I'm speaking to really swear by it. So watch your space. Mickey, have you got any sort of hangovers from your sporting days? Because AFL, you can be hit from what a lot of people don't realise. In rugby league and rugby, you're hitting from front on. You guys can be hit from any angle on the field. Do you have any concussions you played?
Absolutely had concussion as a player. And I think back in the old days, those 90s and certainly the guys before that, the 80s and 70s, 60s, mate, it was all bravado in terms of, all right, you'll be all right, get back on.
Get back up.
Which is get back up, stop being soft and get back up there. So I sort of grew up through that era where you didn't really disclose and tell anybody you had concussion. You just went out, and in the end, if you played poorly, you just said, "I played poorly."
Yep.
Whereas now it's so much better. Guys are educated more. I think the game is looking after players better, but there are certainly some of the players my generation and before me have had some real trauma with themselves. Their speech has been impeded. Physical mobility around bits around. I've met a few of them, and it's a real shame. It's a quality of life for these guys now, and they're in some real troubled times. But I think the game has recognised it, and yeah, more so personally for me, it's always been around sort of the knees and the hips and the back, and unfortunately they're the war stories, and all of these things play its part. I played basketball this morning, and I'm struggling to bloody move now. So,
well, I think it's definitely treatable. I think we're still the only country in the world that still call it dementia or Alzheimer's here, where the rest of the world now started to call it type 3 diabetes, and they're looking at it in a very different light and how it's treated. So, Miles, I'll ask everyone that comes on Lunch with Lee the same question. I'll ask you first, Miles. A young boy or girl wants to go into politics. What advice are you giving them?
Well, I mean, I'll probably tell you that in a year.
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet. I mean, I think that my advice in general for someone who's tried a lot of things and done a lot of stuff is that doesn't matter. Failure is good. When you stuff things up as a lawyer, the cases that I've done badly and made me a better lawyer. As a comedian, the nights when I did it and no one turned up and no one laughed were the ones that make you think, hang on, how do I do this better? Whereas the good days you don't necessarily learn from. So I think the lesson is that the bad days are the ones you can are useful. Appreciate them as much as the good ones.
Well, Mickey's jokes always fall flat. He's learned from that, haven't you, Mickey?
I agree with Miles, though. They're great. They're great learning curves, and you need them. You absolutely need it.
And Mickey, a young boy or girl wants to go into professional sport, AFL. What advice are you giving them?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough industry. It's such a tough industry with, I think, 100 spots up every year and millions wanting to play the game. So it's a really small percentage of the Australian population that gets to run around at the SCG, MCG. It's tough. So if you've been identified, like, do the work. You'll fail. You'll be upset and angry, but don't cheat yourself. Do the work, because when the bright lights come on and you haven't done the work, you'll get found out.
Yeah, you will.
You will get found out, and do the work when you have to. My son at the moment is in the Swans Academy, and it's the same message to him, to his best mates who are playing in the games. It's like, guys, if you've done it, you've done it, and if never stand still, you've got to keep improving. So,
great advice.
It really does. It's not like the old days. It's so much more now. You watch a game of football in the middle of the bush, and you can actually get online and zoom it in and watch a kid. Whereas the old days, there's nowhere to. There's plenty of places to hide.
Brilliant, mate. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on Lunch with Lee. I want to say, firstly to you, Mickey, go the Swans this year. Come on the red and white, mate. I want to see them do really well and go one step further this year. And Miles, mate, keep up the good work, because I think what you said was a real key point. Taking away the shame around the medicinal cannabis, without people really knowing the facts and what it can do positively, is a really, really good thing, mate. So well done on that.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, boys. Thanks, Mickey.
Thanks, guys.
That's it for Lunch with Lee this week. A big thank you goes out to our guests, Michael O'Loughlin and Miles Hunt. And thanks to our sponsors, Hive Sound Studios, Red Roo Vodka, Richard Bowman & Co., and VHS Media. Make sure you hit follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from, and do us a favour, hit 5 stars. And if you're there, you're passionate, please leave a review. We'd really appreciate that. And come check us out on Instagram at I'm at Lunch with Lee. Our official Lunch with Lee photography was done by Felicity Kelly. You can find her on Instagram at Felicity Kelly Portraits. Once again, thanks to our producer, Dan McHugh. We'll be back next time for another cracking episode of Lunch with Lee. We'll see you then.